I want to call this special meeting to order and to welcome everyone who's here in person and those who are watching virtually. And for the record, all the members of the town council are here today, but since those in attendance and people who are watching might not know them individually, I'm just going to ask them to introduce themselves from left to right.
I'm Scott Edmonston.
Patrick Shepley.
Jerry Morris.
Rosemary Hardiman.
Luke Gilmer.
Ron Califf.
Good evening. Mickey Hinman.
Cliff Gravier, Town Manager.
And we also have with us our Assistant Town Manager, Terry Tiemann, our Town Clerk, Molly Daisy, our IT Director, Will Wharton, and Brian, I can never pronounce your last name. Yeah, Brian the Great is also with us today. And also, we're pleased to have with us today Jim Lober, who is with the engineering firm of Mott MacDonald. We've had two special meetings today. One was at 3 o'clock this afternoon, where we talked about the plans for the pathway from Wellington. Well, that would start at, we didn't talk about Collins, but we talked about the portions of it on Kent and Wellington, and answered questions and discussed it. And this meeting is for the portion of the pathway that is proposed for Collins Street. So what I'm going to do is just to explain a little bit about how the meeting will be conducted. Mr. Lober will present the plan for the pathway with the special emphasis on Collins Street. And then following his presentation, if anybody on council has a question, they can ask the question. After the council asks the questions, we would ask anyone who has a comment to make on the plan or questions to ask to please come up to the microphone, identify yourself, and state your address and your question or your comment. But I would ask you to please sign in. We're going to do it in the order in which people have signed in the back of the room. So if you haven't signed in and you anticipate having a comment, then please do so now. And if you sign in and then decide at the point in time when we call your name that your question has been answered or you're okay with what's been said, then you can just say, well, I pass. Okay, so if anyone hasn't signed in and wishes to do so, please do it now because we'll be removing the sign-in sheet. And then we ask that during in order to give everyone an opportunity to speak, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes, and Mr. Gravier will be keeping time. Will you be keeping time?
I think Brian will be keeping time, Mayor. Brian will be keeping time.
Brian, okay. And Brian, how will you signal people?
It's got a big hook.
Okay, did everybody get that?
It'll just be a loud chime, Mayor.
A loud chiming, okay,
Yes.
good, all right. And if you simply agree with something that has been said for the person before you, please just get up and just say you agree with what they have said. The meeting is recorded and it's broadcast live, so please speak into the microphone and provide your name and Bethany Beach address. And from the comments we have received, it's obvious that there are different opinions regarding the proposal. And we in Bethany Beach pride ourselves on listening to one another respectfully and civilly, even if we don't agree with what's been said, and I fully anticipate that that will be the case tonight. So if you haven't signed in already, please do so now. And then what I will do is I'll turn it over to Mr. Gravier.
Mayor, today, Jim Lober, an engineer that's worked with the town for well over a decade. In fact, he was the lead engineer on our South Atlantic project. He was the lead engineer on our initial proposal and project for Collins Street, and is back with us now. In the past, he worked for Kircher Group, and now he's with Mott MacDonald. He's intimately aware of many of the issues we have in Bethany Beach. He also participated in the Kircher Group traffic pedestrian study that occurred here just a few years ago, and again, very, very aware of Bethany. He was the lead engineer and made a presentation in January of 2019 regarding the creation of a 5-foot pathway on Collins. The council voted unanimously to move ahead with that project, but almost immediately after COVID happened. And with it, there was generally things that we had in the works died. And one of the things that went away to a certain degree was moving forward with the project on Collins. Subsequently, though, that gave us an opportunity to have conversations with the Delaware Department of Transportation regarding helping us make the Collins project a more comprehensive and a safer project by involving Kent Avenue. And we were fortunate in the time between January 2019 and now to have DelDOT commit to work with us as we do enhancements on Kent Avenue, and also DelDOT will allow us, with their oversight, to put a pedestrian flashing beacon at the library that crosses from Kent to the south side of Wellington. And Wellington, there'll be a 5-foot pathway, and then that will lead to the pedestrian flashing beacon at Route 1 in Wellington. A major change, and probably the reason many of you are here today, though many of you were here back in 2019 for the 5-foot pathway, is with the enhancement and with the path becoming even safer, because one of the criticisms we heard back in 2019 was that you're doing a path on Collins and it's a path to nowhere. You're taking people to Kent and it's not going to be safe. So with the idea that more people would probably utilize the path, we also sought to expand the path from a 5-foot width, which is what we talked about in 2019 and the council voted on, to an 8-foot width. Not an ideal width, but certainly taking into consideration property owners on Collins and not wanting to widen the right-of-way any more than we had to. We decided 8 feet would be a reasonable amount of space for a multi-use path on Collins. So, Jim?
I apologize to everybody that came earlier and is still here. It's going to be the same thing over and over again. So.
While you're doing that, excuse me, is Jen Carter here? Yes, ma'am. Did you give your flash drive to Will? Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so good evening, everybody. As Cliff mentioned, the design for the path that we introduced to you back in 2019 has changed a little bit. We've made it longer, we've made it wider in some places. So we wanted to bring it to you again and explain to you what we have in mind and go over the justifications and the results, not the results, but the goals, I guess I should say. So as always, as an engineer, I like to start with the big picture view to give everybody a little bit of perspective. This is a zoning map, tax parcel map for the town of Bethany. This is the extent of the town east, the ocean to the east, Assawamma Canal to the west, and then north along the salt pond, and then south where South Bethany, we run into South Bethany in the Sea Colony. And then here, highlighted in red, is the location of the project, right in the middle of town. Collins Street starting at the west side of Half Moon, moving east to Kent Avenue. The path then would move south along Kent Avenue to Wellington, and then the path would continue east along Wellington to Coastal Highway. What this highlights is the number of residential parcels at the end of that path that are channelized by Collins that have no other than 26, which is an ideal, but no other alternative for transportation, pedestrians, bicycles, in order to get east to the beach. That's everybody back in Bethany West, and it represents 27% of the parcels in the town of Bethany overall. So more than a quarter of the people in Bethany want to go to the beach, most likely have to use Collins to get there. So some studies have been done starting back in 2004 with DelDOT, recognizing that there are issues that need to be solved, and so numbers were taken, analyses were done. And
Excuse me, Mr. Lober, could you speak into the microphone?
Oh, sure,
There's some
sorry.
people signaling they can't hear,
Can't hear me, okay.
or unless they're old like me and it's going.
Okay, sorry about that. So again, in 2004, DelDOT did an analysis, collected numbers, collected data, pedestrians and bicycles. Then a year later, they followed that study up with what they termed as a transportation circulation study. They took the numbers that they collected in 2004 and put them together and did an analysis of what potential improvements and recommendations they would make to make things safer and more efficient. About 9-10 years later, we got involved in subsequent summers in 2014, 15, and 16 to collect traffic volume and speed data around different hotspots in town. And then the following year after that, in 2017, we did a traffic calming analysis to, again, look at the data that had been collected, building on the stuff that DelDOT had collected in 2004, adding our data, more recent data to that to come up with suggestions for possible projects, improvements around town for traffic calming, speed abatement, things like that. So inevitably, and what is a surprise to no one, what we all determined was that Collins, Kent, and Wellington is a major pedestrian thoroughfare for a good portion of the town. There are no existing pedestrian facilities along that length. There is some cross-through traffic, we believe, that happens. Everybody is pretty aware that it happens, of people diverting off of 26 and then heading east through Bethany West and down Collins. And that the biggest safety issue along that route is the fact that there's no separation between the vehicles and the pedestrians. There's no opportunity to be separate. It's just not picking me up, huh?
Some people can say they can't hear you.
Okay. So I hope is that better? Okay. So again,
Excuse me, there are seats down here in the front. Yes.
the number one identified issue was the lack of the separation, the lack of the ability to be in your own identified safe space as a pedestrian. So what came out of those studies were recommendations to widen the pavement, to create separate pedestrian facilities, and to, on top of that, incorporate some traffic control elements to increase the safety and also reduce the speed. So we get into the specific project elements, and this is where things have changed from what we presented to you back in 2019. But now along the length of Collins from Half Moon to Kent, there's going to be an additional 8 feet of paving as opposed to just 5 feet of paving. 5 feet of paving on the south, as always, as was before, an additional 3 feet on the north. And then what happens is the 10-foot travel lanes shift to the north to allow that entire 8 feet of additional paving to be identified as the pedestrian path. So the road gets 8 feet wider, but the travel lanes stay the same. The only thing that happens is that a new 8-foot pedestrian identified path gets created on the south side. Along Kent Avenue, there's going to be an additional 5 feet of paving. There is currently a 5-foot shoulder along Kent Avenue now. That 5-foot existing shoulder will become the bike path. The additional 5 feet of paving that we're going to put to the west of that will become the pedestrian path that then leads south along Kent to Wellington. And then once you turn and head down Wellington, there'll be an additional 5 feet of paving along the south side of Wellington that will be the identified path, take us to Coastal Highway. I think we have some technical difficulties.
Didn't pay the bill. Didn't pay the bill.
Will?
This is what the FAA looked like Monday morning, too.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
Is that an option? I wish I had a joke to tell.
Jim, while we have a little pause, I just want to emphasize, because I talked to a couple of people after the previous meeting in Wellington, the road on Collins is going to shift, but the area that vehicles can drive in is not changing. It's 10 feet in each direction now, total of 20 feet of asphalt. The roadway will still be 20 feet wide for vehicle traffic on Collins. It is just shifting 3 feet north. Does that make sense? No? Okay. There was some confusion this at the earlier meeting.
Was that the Blessed Mother?
Mayor, we're going to need your login for Netflix.
Okay, we're good? Thank you. All right, so this is the next slide. We've moved on from, moved on from talking about the additional width of paving to talk about the additional project elements that we're going to incorporate. So at the crosswalk where the path crosses Kent from the west side of Kent to the east side of Kent and then continue along Wellington, we're going to incorporate a rapid flashing beacon at that location, standard DelDOT installation, much like you see along Route 1 Coastal Highway here at the intersections. And then along the paint stripe that separates the travelway from the pedestrian way along the entire length of the job, we're going to have raised reflective pavement markers that are incorporated into the paint stripe. So they're a heavy-duty plastic that have a reflector in them, and they sit at a slight angle so that the sunlight and the headlights pick them up, and they become a very effective visual marker that jump out at drivers to show them where that line is located. And then we're also going to incorporate some speed humps along the block of Collins between Kent and Fairway. There'll be 2 speed humps incorporated in that length. We are currently considering additional speed humps along the rest of the project on Wellington and also farther west on Collins. We're in discussion with the town as to whether we actually want to go that direction, but for the moment the project includes 2 speed humps between Kent and Fairway. So goals, hopeful outcomes, inevitably an increased safety. That's why we've started 18 years ago with DelDOT looking at the numbers in the first place. That's what everybody's goal is, safer opportunity for pedestrians to make their way to the beach. We believe that the elements of the project will not only increase safety for the pedestrians, but it will also reduce the speed of the cars, and obviously those 2 things are interconnected. 2 positive things about the project is that the project itself is limited to the public right-of-way. We've got 50 feet along Wellington, we've got about 40 feet for a stretch of Collins, and then it widens out to 50 feet for the rest of Collins. The entirety of the project improvements are contained within that width of public right-of-way. There's no private property being taken in order to make these improvements. And then there are no permanent easements that will be required on private property, again, for any of these improvements. Temporary access opportunities to just complete the work, but no permanent easements for any improvements on anyone's private property. To hit on cost quickly, our engineer's estimate for the work as the project stands at the moment is approximately $730,000. We put a 10% contingency on that, and we're looking at an estimated cost for the project of about $803,000.
And if I can put a finer point on that, so that's $803,000 only for construction with a 10% add-on for a contingency. The town has added another 17% to that for an additional 7% for contingency and 10% for engineering oversight of the project, which takes it to $940,000. That dollar amount is being funded or will be funded from grant monies the town has received for the project.
That's the basis of my presentation. I'm happy to take questions.
Anybody on council have any questions? No, we're going to comments. You can ask a question when you, yeah. Is your name down here?
No, but he has a question, but
I know, we're not
asking
doing it.
questions.
Yeah,
We're-
yeah.
that's right.
And then comments. And
Jim,
then comments.
And then comments.
Jim, can you talk a little bit about the fact that the plans only include 1 pedestrian path on the road?
As one side.
One
Sure,
side,
Sure.
yes.
Inevitably, there's an attempt at balance between improved safety, improved infrastructure, but also property owners, existing uses within the right-of-way, parking, additional impervious. We're always trying to strike a balance with how can we do the most good without too much cost or too much change. So the decision was made as we analyzed the project was to put the path on one side of the street. Both sides of the street would be twice as much additional paving, twice as much additional impervious, twice as much cost. So there was a happy medium that we tried to strike with only having the path on one side of the street. A lot of the discussion that came up in the first meeting about the fact that the path is only on one side of the street is that as people are walking along the path, they'll be walking with traffic as opposed to against traffic. Will they be able to see it coming? They'll be walking with traffic. It'll be behind them. Maybe they won't hear it. Maybe they won't think to look before they step out of the path. But the point needs to be made that with a path only on one side of the street, all of the traffic to and from is using the path, right? So there's 50% of the path traffic is in one direction, 50% of the path traffic is in the opposite direction. So regardless of which side of the street you put it on, at some point somebody's walking with traffic with cars approaching them from behind. So without doubling everything about the project, this is where we ended up.
Just to continue on that, after the meeting, I leaned over to you and asked a similar question. You mentioned a standard about a width of travel. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. A typical industry standard for a sidewalk is 5 feet. That's considered to be the minimum width you need for two people to walk abreast, shoulder to shoulder, comfortably along a sidewalk. And as far as ADA requirements and things like that are concerned, those are what would be considered the minimums. You can go below that for minimal stretches as long as you've got opportunities for people to pass and whatnot. But anything below 5 feet would be considered limited, narrow, however you want to phrase that. So what we tried to do was we tried to create one good 5-foot path, and then on Collins have the opportunity for something slightly wider to just make it that much more efficient because there's that many more people.
Jim, this is something you clarified in the previous meeting, but when you look at that map, I think it's important to recognize that if you look to the sort of the left of what's now Bethany West, there's Turtle Walk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's like, there's actually a connector to go from Turtle Walk into Bethany West. So there's a lot of those folks coming down that way
Pedestrians
too.
that
And
actually do
that
come
makes the scope even a little bit bigger in terms of the size, right? 40.
And Jim talked about the percentage,
Yeah.
but totally, there's almost 800 homes potentially impacted with the ability to use Collins as a pedestrian bicycle thoroughfare.
Okay.
Any more questions?
No.
One other. Jim, I know one of the concerns is about speed bumps, and you did address the number. But I think one thing that probably needs to be emphasized is, and I've heard a concern from a number of people, is that these are not the plastic kind that are there right now. They're what a DelDOT specified
Yeah,
speed bump.
The 2 speed humps that we're proposing are DelDOT standard speed humps, asphalt at DelDOT standard grade, height, width, approach angle, those types of things, yes. Yes. And again, one of the things that came out of a conversation that I had after the last meeting that I think we should also point out is there was some confusion about whether traffic controls were being removed, whether some stop signs were coming down or whatnot. There's absolutely no removal of any traffic control devices that exist. We're only adding additional features. So I think that's important to point out.
Okay, right now we'll take some questions, but I would caution you to please keep them questions. At the last meeting, people asked a question and then went into 5 minutes of comment. So we're asking you to just ask your question. You'll have a time to make your comments later. And please don't comment once your question has been answered, okay?
They want everybody to use the microphone because that's the only way you'll be added to the recording.
And please identify yourself.
Again, George Petro, 605 Collins Street. In these studies that you've alluded to, did anybody pull up the statistics of how many times since 1978, there's been an accident on Collins Street?
I don't believe any accident data was analyzed, no.
Since 2019, are you aware of a single incident of any accident on Collins Street?
I'm not.
Since 2012, there has been one personal injury accident involving 2 bicycles, a husband and a wife that ran into each other and fell over.
And I think
On Collins, yes.
I'll save my records of what I learned about Collins Street.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Are there any questions?
Lothar Schapler, I'm on Collins Street since 1999. Just simple, quick question. I saw the dates on some of the surveys that were done for pedestrian traffic and so forth go back to 2004, 2005. Are these really up to date enough to assess current situations? Because things have changed since I've been there.
Sure.
So we have a multitude of traffic counts over the years on Collins. We have a pedestrian count, which we believe has only grown, that was conducted in person in the 04-05 timeframe. We don't think the numbers of pedestrians and cyclists has decreased since 04-05, and since it's very expensive to do pedestrian counts because there's actual live people on the street, we have not engaged in any more pedestrian counts. by our practical experience, the police department's practical experience, we believe the number of pedestrians and cyclists has increased. The 2004-2005 numbers indicated in the 12-hour period on a Saturday in the summer, 800-plus people used Collins, bikes and pedestrians. 500-plus went south, 200-plus went north when they got to Kent. So not wanting to recreate the wheel, everybody understands the number of people that use the roadway. We have not gone back and done other pedestrian counts. But I have reams of traffic data and traffic speeds if anybody would like to look at that.
Thank you. In the back of the room there, I think there was a question.
Which way?
A question, yeah.
Start closer.
Thank you. Boot Sargis at 400 Collins Street. How many people can comfortably walk on an 8-foot path?
I would say 3.5.
Okay. And the speed bumps that are the Del Dot regulation speed bumps, are they the same as on Oakwood?
That question came up at the last meeting too. I honestly don't know what's on Oakwood.
Okay.
If they were built relatively recently, then most likely they are Del Dot standard, but I don't know personally.
Thank you.
Where do you want me?
Hi, thank you. Liz Doman from Collins Street. Is your intention that bicycles and pedestrians would be using the pathway in both directions?
That's what we expect to happen. We hope that most of the people use the path. We figure that the volume of people that are going to be walking on the path might be such that people on bicycles won't be comfortable staying on the path and might still use the road. We've done the best we could to create the widest path we could, and we're sort of going to rely on the common sense of the users to hopefully make it work in the long run.
Thank you. Who would have the right of way in that situation?
I would believe the pedestrians would.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. A question?
Alan Day, 406 Collins. It looks like the intent of this is to get the people out of Bethany West to the beach. There's an existing sidewalk along 26. How is this safer than forcing them to use that sidewalk as opposed to a walkway that's going to be separated by a paint stripe and a car going by at 25 miles an hour, 30 miles an hour?
I think at the end of the day, it's opportunity. It's multiple opportunities. Everybody from Bethany West is not going to go all the way over to 26 to do it. They're going to go the way that they feel is the shortest, and we just want to be able to provide opportunities for them to be safe while they're there.
Was the town's negligence taken into effect in these studies as far as, is that safe, having kids walking next to a car going by?
I'm not going to speak to negligence. I don't know.
I think the town would be negligent not to try to provide some safe alternative on Collins Street, and that's why the proposal is here today.
I'm not sure that answers the question. Well, it's gross negligence if you've been put on notice that you're creating a dangerous situation.
I don't think.
We're getting into the comment period now. You can have
Yes,
a time to
yeah.
comment later, Mr.
Well,
Day.
my question wasn't answered, so I'm just following up. Thank you.
Okay. Is there someone, I think over here on the right?
Oh, we have two microphones.
Hi, my name's Jerry Keating, and 411 Collins, and I guess I have an observation with a question. If you look at the map that you were referring to earlier, Bethany West, as you can see, is clearly oriented to Garfield Parkway with all the road layout and pedestrian. Why don't they encourage it to, you know, they have sidewalks, why aren't they encouraged to use that to get to the beach? If you put a one-way street on Collins right there around, you know, the lower part of Bethany West, you know, you would succeed in diverting the traffic. Secondly, you had mentioned Turtle Walk, and there's a little bridge there back behind in the very north. I guess that would be the northern corner. You're about 50 yards or probably 40 yards from 26 at that point. Why would you not walk down the sidewalk on Garfield Parkway and instead go all the way down through the neighborhood if you were trying to, you know, get to the beach? It just seems like common sense observations. Thank you.
Questions? Just questions? Brian, there's a woman here.
Hi, my name is Jerry McPhee, 600 Collins Street, and I apologize if I repeat anything that's been said, but
Is this a question?
it is. But
Okay.
what I wanted to say first is I'm
Okay.
having a very hard time hearing
Okay.
because of the microphone, so I'm apologizing if I'm repeating anything.
No, that's fine. Thank
My
you.
questions are, you're beginning this at the stop sign of Collins where the traffic light turns on to come back over to Collins. The upper end of Bethany West is much more narrow and much more of a hazard than the lower end that you're intending to increase. My question is, what are you doing about the upper end? My other question is, are you trying to invite more traffic from 26 to go down Collins? My other question is, will there be parking on Collins for those of us who are losing our personal property and we won't have parking places? And then finally, what happens to the trolley stop on Collins, which is very much used? So I have a lot of concerns about all this. Thank you.
So first, to talk about the project farther west on Collins, we are considering additional speed humps on that part of Collins, again, in discussions with the town as to whether they actually want us to go in that direction. So there may be more speed humps farther west on Collins to help with the traffic control, with the speed through there. One of your other questions was, why are we encouraging traffic to come through? I don't know. I can't think of one aspect of the project that would be encouraging vehicular traffic to come through. The travel lanes are the same width. We're adding a pedestrian path. We're adding striping for that pedestrian path, markers for the pedestrian path. We're adding speed bumps to slow the traffic down. We're not removing any stop signs. I don't know why somebody would want to drive through there more later than they do now. I'm not completely clear on that issue. If I missed a question, I apologize in the middle there. Parking. Yeah, there will still be an opportunity to park outside of the additional paving in the right of way and on your private property. That parking that has been happening now has been happening within the town's private right of way, public right of way, I should say. There's nothing keeping you from parking on Collins outside the limits of the road and the pedestrian way, yes. You'll need to park outside of the limits of the road and the walkway. Right, you don't, well, sure. Okay, well, there's going to be 28 feet of paving.
You're taking the lawns, so we're losing parking in front of our house. So if we can't park in front of our house, then, like, there are 2 drains on my property, which I don't know if that's been addressed at all or not. 2 big drains. So I can't park on my property, and I can't park in the path lane. So where am I to park?
So the blacktop area, if the project is approved, will be 28 feet wide. The portion of Collins that's 40 feet, there'll be 12 feet remaining. On the south side of the roadway, there will be 5 foot of right-of-way to the south side of the path before your property line. If you can pull in on that 5 foot in the front of your property and park, you'll be able to do that. You won't be able to park in the path. So if your 5 foot of right-of-way and whatever space you have in the front of your property doesn't accommodate your car to parallel park, you'll not be able to parallel park in front of your property.
So if I can't park, then I have to find someplace else to park and walk to my property?
I assume you have a driveway, and the driveway accommodates your cars.
I do have a driveway, but we have more than one vehicle. So you're limiting us to one vehicle or two at the most?
So, again, your property should be able to accommodate your parking. There's been, I don't think there's any development west of Route 1. Certainly none of our streets and no developments were developed with the idea that parallel parking would be part of that development or part of the design of the developer. So I can't think of streets generally west of Route 1 that lend themselves to parallel parking. There's the odd case where there's not a swale, where there's open space and there isn't a garbage pail or a mailbox that allows you to do it, but not many people do. In this situation, if you do have the space, again, south of the blacktop area, the 5-foot right-of-way, and whatever you have on your property, you'll be able to park. So I don't know what
I
your,
still
I don't
can't
know what your
envision it.
individual property is, so.
I don't think it's going to work. I don't mean to be rude or
Yes, ma'am.
critical. I don't think it's going to work. And are you taking 5 feet on one side and 3 feet on the other?
Yes.
Okay, then I really don't think it's going to work. And what happens to the trolley stop?
We'll manage the trolley stop. The trolley will still have a stop.
Okay. I just think it's really, it's not going to work for the residents on Collins Street. Some of the houses are right up to the street almost.
I think
You
we're
take
getting,
5
I think we're
feet.
getting into comment now. If you would hold your comment until later and let people
Okay,
ask
thank
questions.
you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Jerry Keating again. Could you answer my questions? Do you remember them?
I don't remember
We got-
questions, no.
Okay, looking at the map of Bethany West, the red area, it's all oriented towards Garfield Parkway. You can see that clearly. Why not encourage the traffic, pedestrian and vehicular, to go down Garfield Parkway since it's got sidewalks, it's been improved recently, and you would divert a lot of traffic off of the other part of Collins Street where it's not set up that way, rather than to spend $1 million and take away people's parking and all these other bad things. Have you looked at that?
We have not looked at that, no.
Okay.
The sidewalk along Garfield Parkway.
You can see how they developed it to orient to Garfield Parkway.
Well,
It's
for
clear as
vehicular
daylight.
traffic, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We're not talking about vehicles.
I know, but you're a
Okay.
traffic engineer, right? Civil engineer?
Civil engineer, sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's the first thing that jumped out at me is clear as day that that's where they intended for traffic to go.
Vehicular, I agree.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
And same with pedestrian, you got sidewalks on either side of the road, rather than, I understand people like to walk down Collins because it's a nice tree-lined street. I do the same thing, but, if you're talking public safety, you should divert it to where it's.
Mr. Edmondson, I
exists.
think you had a,
Yeah, I mean, I'll wade into these waters here. So, I mean, and you just said it, Mr. Keating, that you do the same thing. You like walking down Collins. I understand, but the people west of you live there too, and they walk down Collins. And so we're not talking about theoretically where they'll walk. The traffic study and the pedestrian study shows that they do it. So the question is, how do you address the fact that they do it? Where I went to school at Virginia Tech, the drill field, there are paved paths that you would think people would take, and there are crisscrossing paths that people take through the dirt. That's because it's the shortest distance between 2 points. So I think what we're looking at, and that, and the engineer's in the position of studying what is actually happening, not what might happen.
so,
Precipitate on what might happen, you might divert traffic. You're answering your question. You said about Virginia Tech and the paved paths, yet you're going to put a paved path there expecting the people to go down it.
No, I'm saying that people already do go down it in large numbers.
Yeah, I've been there for over 20 years. I'm fully aware of traffic. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I'll yield
Mayor?
the,
Thank you.
unless,
Mayor, do you just want to jump to this?
yeah, we're going to start, we're getting into comments now
yeah, I understand.
and
I'll
arguing.
yield.
So please, only questions, and then we'll start on the comment.
Laura Irwin, 409 Collins. In order to achieve...
Could you speak into the microphone, please?
Yes, sorry. In order to achieve pedestrian safety, have you considered subsidizing the trolley and perhaps putting racks on the trolley to get more people to take the trolley? And the other thing is, during high season, have you considered limiting the permits so there's less construction. What I don't know is what happens on Collins is it, what type of traffic is it? So if you want to limit contractor traffic, maybe limit the number of permits during high season. And has anybody tried to do that, either the trolley or the limit of construction? Because it does look like you're encouraging the pedestrian traffic and encouraging the, oops, that's a comment, sorry.
That's a comment. Questions only.
Yes. The question is, has the council considered, and I think where we're all jumping around here, is the flow of traffic through Collins and Wellington. And the problem we have that flow of traffic, it's because that road becomes an alternate for 26, especially during the summer months when it's bumper-to-bumper traffic, church is letting out, and you have a constant flow of cars from 26 using that route to Kent to get to the beach. I know you guys have studied this since 2004. A lot of you council members have been here since that date. Have you guys ever thought of an idea of closing off those roads? I don't know, I'm not a traffic engineer.
I think Mr. Loba has addressed that several times in the last meeting in 2019
one
and again
way
today. Would you just,
Sure. We can't just close roads. They're public right-of-ways that are open to the use of the public, and we would be, it would be illegal and unenforceable essentially to just close roads. As far as making them one-way, it would inevitably make the problem worse because one-way streets need to happen in pairs. And if Collins becomes a one-way street in either direction, there's no pair for it other than 26, which then pushes that much more traffic onto 26. So I don't think it's feasible. It's something that was actually contemplated in one of the original DelDOT studies, and they quickly eliminated it from the discussion.
and also when you, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think when you close roads to public use, you risk losing municipal street aid.
That's a very good question. I'm sure because it's just not allowed, I guarantee DelDOT and the state would have an issue with it, yes.
And no comment, question?
No, I guess I misspoke. Yeah, closing the road is not an option.
Sure, right.
But maybe making it one way. I know you guys have looked at this. You've looked at this for the past 18 years. You're making a pathway. You know there's going to be bicyclists there.
Now you're getting into a comment. Thank you. Are there a question?
I just want to know, have you thought about widening the sidewalk on 26?
I think that's not our area.
It's owned by the state.
DelDOT.
And the state, within the last decade, just restored 26 according to them, and it's what it is right now.
That would
so.
be the perfect.
They'd have to take more people's property.
Well, I think to Mr. Edmondson's point is the human condition is that people are always going to take the shortest route, no matter what's presented to them. And no matter how many signs we would put throughout Bethany West that points to Route 26, I think people being people are going to walk the shortest way or bike the shortest way they can to get where they want to go, so.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know it's a comment, but I would
Thank
think it's the same distance.
Thank you. Okay, anybody, questions only and no comment on the answer, please. Well, you can then come up later and comment.
Okay, Jane Dowler at 602 Collins. We've been, right there for 20 years watching people walk down the street. I am wondering, do you studies show that these large family groups are going to go 2 by 2 down the sidewalk? They have strollers and scooters and three-wheel bikes, and the whole family goes down together. And it's been that way 20 years.
Right.
Is that the question?
Yes, my question is, do the studies show that if you put a 5-foot path in, the people, these large groups, will limit themselves to 2 by 2?
Right. No, the studies, of course, don't show that. The studies show that it's safer to provide a separate area for pedestrians to be in than the vehicles.
Laura Irwin, 409 Collins. I have a utility pole question on Collins. So on the north side, when the 3 feet is added, did the study consider that with more vehicular traffic, that the utility pole so close to the vehicles would pose any danger?
The utility poles may need to be relocated, depending on where they fall with the edge, the new edge of paving. We'll have to determine that on a utility pole by utility pole basis. As far as for a 25-mile-per-hour speed limit, the clear zone, there's essentially no required clear zone, so the pole could technically be immediately adjacent to the paving. So it's something to be determined as we go.
Okay, question?
Yes. Don McAvoy, 701 Fenwood Circle. There's a little bit of an aside, but the
Is it a
town
question?
No, it's a question.
Okay,
It
good,
is a
okay.
question, but it's a little bit
Thank you.
aside from the topics they've been
Thank you.
doing.
Okay.
The town's been putting a lot of effort into stormwater management. We know we live in basically a soup bowl here. How does placing an 8-foot impervious path help that at all? It seems like it's contrary to where the town should be going, because it's going to create more stormwater, not less. So did you consider that, and how, is it contrary to what the town wants to do? That's my question.
The town has looked, again, extensively at Collins and Wellington in terms of ponding and pooling issues from stormwater, rainwater, and we can say that we don't have any significant problems on Collins or Wellington. We do have standing water. We do have standing water after a rain event, and within 24 to 36 hours, most of that water is dissipated. We have looked at a pervious surface for the pathway, and that adds $250,000 to the project.
You didn't answer my question. You're adding more water into a stormwater system that is already overwhelmed.
We believe that...
You're just saying on Collins there isn't any
No,
place.
I'm not.
You're adding more water into the system.
Excuse me, sir. Please, you can ask the question, but please do it civilly. Thank you.
We're adding the same amount of water. There's no increase in the water, so, point.
Mr. Gowan?
Two questions. One is, one I asked before, and I'm going to ask it again for the benefit of everybody here.
Could you speak louder, Mr. Gowan, please?
I have two questions. One I asked before, and I would like to ask it again for the benefit of the group. And also a separate question, a new question. Does Bethany West have a homeowners association? And what is their position? And what involvement have they had in the decision for this project?
They haven't had any...
They have a homeowners association.
They have a homeowners association.
They have a homeowners association?
I'm on the board of Bethany West, and the board elected not to take a position, is the answer.
Would you share the reason why that they elected not to take a position?
Really because it was the thought that it was the scope of it's not really technically a homeowners association. It's an activities association. So the scope revolves directly around pools, tennis courts, paddleball courts. And this doesn't fall into that.
Okay.
Now, I'll say there was a minority who said we probably ought to take a position, but I've got to leave it at that.
Okay.
To be honest with you, okay? Does
And
that
the
answer
other-
the question?
Yes, that answers that. Thank you. The other question was, I asked earlier, we saw this on the presentation about the right-of-way. I mentioned it earlier. The town manager mentioned that he would look into it, but for the benefit of the group, I pulled my deed out of the drawer, and my deed doesn't say anything about an easement or a right-of-way. So my question was, by virtue of what document, what legal document, does the town of Bethany have the right-of-way to do what you've proposed?
As I mentioned, we'll have our solicitor provide something for you that documents what we've said, is the town owns its public right-of-way. There's nothing on your deed that would show an easement, because we have no easement on your property, and the right-of-way would begin at the end of your front property line. So I don't know how that would be indicated on your survey either. But the town owns the roads that have been dedicated to the town over the course of time, and certainly Collins has been dedicated to the town.
Yeah.
We would not be investing the work and time and effort and energy to do work on something we did not own, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, I'd be interested in, when you follow up with that, on that
Certainly.
answer.
Thank you, Mr. Gowan.
Normally, there is a plat associated with a deed, and that plat shows the exact pinpoints where your property is. I think if you'll find your plat and then walk out to the front of your street to see where your pins are, which are the corners of your property, they are exactly where the right-of-way that Cliff is talking about. It should be very clear with the legal document that you have for your property.
Over here.
Hi, Jennifer Carter, 429 Collins. Mr. Bethany West, wasn't there, I don't know your name, I'm sorry. Wasn't there a meeting in 2018 or 19 of the Bethany West Board of Directors and the whole community in which Mr. Gravier came and presented the project? And I heard, this is hearsay, it's just hearsay, but then after that it seemed to have gained a lot of momentum. It's a hearsay, it's a feeling. So is that true that there was a meeting?
I didn't hear the question.
I'm sorry, I was,
Your question.
So I
what
think
was the question?
I think I understand the question.
Okay.
Okay. So certainly. So the question is, was there a meeting of the HOA of Bethany West where I spoke about the project or proposed project in Collins? So every 2 or 3 years, the Bethany West HOA invites the town manager to make a presentation. And in that presentation, I'll talk about replenishment, dredging, whatever is topical. And in one of those meetings, the one you're referring to, we spoke about the proposed project on Collins. But that was spoken about in conjunction with 15 or 20 other items. I was just at Bethany West again this past summer and did the same thing, and also mentioned Collins again then. But there was no action on the part of the HOA, nobody votes. It was just informative, and I do that with the HOAs throughout the community.
Just a comment to that, I am a member of the HOA, and yes, I confirm you were there multiple times, and back in 18, this was discussed.
Thank you.
Okay, let's start. Where? Okay, we'll take those last three, and then we'll go on to comments.
Dan Maloney, 601 Collins Street, been there for 42 years. It relates to flood control.
Can't hear you.
You cannot hear me?
We can now.
Oh, okay. You're welcome. You really got to get into this guy. Flood control is the issue. In front of our house, when we first built, there was a ditch. The town went through and put in a nice big pipe to help drain the water away. My belief is that this widening is going to run the pavement over that pipe. I couldn't find the pipe on any of the drawings out here, so the question is, have you looked at the impact of the increased traffic we're going to get in the higher speeds on the pipes that would drain the water under the roadways?
I'm trying to figure out how to answer that question. We have looked at the drainage pipes. If there are existing drainage pipes in the right-of-way and in the swales and ditches along the side of the road, those are either being replaced or relocated to make them work with the additional width of the paving. The pipes will be industry standard traffic bearing as they need to be. They won't be specially thick or heavy because of additional speeds, because we don't anticipate additional increase in vehicular speed, if that makes sense. And to be honest, vehicular speed doesn't really factor into the strength of a pipe anyway. It's purely weight. So the pipes will be replaced. Existing pipes will be replaced. Some new pipes will be placed. Drainage, we're doing the best we can with the drainage as it exists. That's about all I can say to that. Okay.
There was a couple of other questions over here, and we're just doing questions so we can get to the comments, please.
Yeah, Lothar Schapler again, on 425 Collins. So you referred to DelDOT as sort of a guiding light of how things are done.
Put the mic, please.
Please speak into the microphone.
The DelDOT regulations, to my understanding, require 10 feet on either end of a roadway, either side of a roadway, for an easement. And the plan's going to leave less than 10 feet of right-of-way on both sides. And you talked about a temporary easement for the construction phase. Wouldn't you need a permanent easement for the same access to these easements? And how's that considered?
So we follow DelDOT guidance as far as standard construction specifications are concerned. So anything that we put in the road, the speed bumps, the pipes, those are going to be designed and installed in accordance with DelDOT construction specifications. But because it's not a DelDOT road, we don't have to follow DelDOT's space or geometry requirements for easements and whatnot along the sides of the right-of-way. So if you were going to create a new subdivision and build a road that would eventually be dedicated to DelDOT for them to take over as part of their inventory of roads, they would require a 10-foot right-of-way on both sides of that road, permanent right-of-way, because they're doing that now because eventually they want to install multi-use paths along all of the new roads. But we don't have that requirement here, so there will be no new easements along the outside of the right-of-ways.
So just as a short follow-up to that, the easement reduction is the big issue here, and the purpose of this pathway is for safety. Not anybody's safety, everybody's safety. And that includes the residents who are closer to the street and closer to the property line as a result of these reduced easements. On one side, it's going to be 7 feet. On the other side, it's going to be 5 feet. How is that considered in this whole thing? People are doing grandchildren and children are playing on the property as close to the property line. In a case where where you're expected to park on a 7-foot or a 5-foot easement, you cannot even open the door of the vehicle without opening it into the traffic. So I'm pointing at and asking, how do you rationalize this as being a safe solution for some of us while you're focused on making it safe for the pedestrians to come down the street on your pathway? You're on one hand making a safe passage for people that are not necessarily part of the neighborhood or adjoining to the neighborhood, i.e. getting out of, shortcutting their way to the beach, but you are also not addressing the issue of making it less safe for the people whose property lines will be left with a 5-foot or 7-foot easement. Just asking how is that considered?
The width of the right-of-way remains as it was. Whether it was 40 feet, whether it was 50 feet, that distance is not changing. The improvements within that right-of-way are getting slightly wider, yes. So the distance from somebody on your personal property, the distance that they would have to travel from where they might be on your private property to the edge of the road is getting slightly narrower. That is correct. I don't know.
Dangerously narrow?
Well,
I would call it dangerously narrow, but you cannot open your car door.
Okay.
And it not swinging into the streetway, the roadway portion.
We can,
And that is a fact.
you can comment on that. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Mr. Day?
Yes, ma'am. Just for the sake of clarity, is it uniform that if you go to the south side of Collins Street, the town has a 10-foot right-of-way from that further south? Is that what we're saying tonight?
No.
Okay.
No. There is a 50-foot, portion of Collins, there's a 40-foot right-of-way, and then when you get to the boundary of Bethany West, as you head west, the right-of-way widens out to 50 feet. So there is a portion of the right-of-way that's 10 feet wider than another portion of the right-of-way. But there's no easement outside of the right-of-way. There's just a 40-foot stretch for a length, and then it becomes a 50-foot width for a length.
So when Collins Street was built, was it built within the parameters of that right-of-way, say 10 feet?
It does exist within the right-of-way. It's not consistent. It's not perfectly parallel with the right-of-way, but it is the bounds of it.
So it can vary from
right
down to 5 feet, maybe?
I'd have to look at it, but yes, it does vary.
Okay.
Yes.
The reason I'm asking is because I know there's not a 10-foot right-of-way from the pin in front of my house, and we just had a survey to the road.
Got it.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, last question.
Two
And
questions
please speak into the
about-
microphone.
oh, Laura Irwin, 409 Collins. So 2 questions about bicycle traffic. If there is supposed to be bicycle traffic on the Collins pathway, why isn't it marked in the picture? And the other question is, does the traffic engineering company have a bicycle subcontractor or component? I know bicycle pathways throughout the country, it's just a big deal right now, everywhere. And there's just a lot of special considerations based on human nature of bicyclists. They don't like to slow down, and as well as just their needs are different, and it was mentioned in the earlier meeting, which is so true, that is ever increasing and will continue to as people come even further from Bethany, the town of Bethany. They'll come from Ocean View, et cetera, and probably want to take that pathway as well. So has that been considered, the whole whole bicycle?
So the first question, the bicycle markings on the pavement have not been included because it's not wide enough to be, per DelDOT standards, a quote-unquote multi-use path. At only 8 feet wide, it can't officially accommodate both pedestrians and cyclists. So we've only included the pedestrian markings for that. As far as looking at this from the bicyclist's point of view, that has not been done. Nobody has tried to uniquely tweak the project to accommodate bicyclists who want to go really fast. We're trying to create a wider, safer, safe haven is a phrase that Cliff uses a lot to maximize the opportunity for safety. We're not creating a bike route, for lack of a better way to put it. We're trying to maximize safety.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Lober. And thank you, everyone. We'll now get to the comment section, the comment portion of it. And as I mentioned before, you'll have 3 minutes to make your comments, and Brian will keep track, and you will know when your time is up. So the first person who wants to offer comments is Jennifer Carter. And please state your name and your address when you come to the podium. Thank you.
Got a nice clock here, too. Jennifer Carter, 429 Collins Street. Will? And do I don't have a clicker. Oh, thank you. That's all right. Thank you. I know how to use it. Oh, and I can't see it. Is this working? Okay. I'm sorry? Oh, that was the wrong one. It's the PowerPoint, please. I'll run quickly, not to worry. I did some renderings early like 2 weeks ago, whatever. And that was before the Bethany renderings came out. Can everyone hear me clearly? Thank you. Too loud? Okay. So this is one of the things that came up. I put it in the PowerPoint just to everybody has probably seen this. They just had a meeting on it about the pervious versus impervious surfaces. So if you do the mathematics with this 50 feet times 8 feet, it's about 300 and some square feet of asphalt. If you're looking for the permeable asphalt, that's a wonderful thing. But otherwise, you're adding that to the street and in front of our properties. This is, as it says, an unofficial estimated visual. I kind of got into Photoshop and I took actual pictures. This is one view to the east. It's what I anticipate that it will actually look like. When you start building the road next to the trees, something's going to happen to the roots or they need to be taken out. And also, will we have compensation for access to our properties by the construction equipment and the construction people at the time when they have to be on our property? So that's looking east. That's an unaltered view, so they're backwards, but anyway. There you go, that's another one. I've moved everything back. That's west view, unaltered. That's west view, altered. So you can see the difference just in the asphalt, and you can see the difference in the atmosphere. I was wondering the same thing. Why is there a bicycle in the pedestrian lane at the bottom? Why are there bicycles in the pedestrian lane at the top circle right there? on this rendering, and you can see it there. If you look at the, this is a cropping of it. So if you go to the north, there's a cyclist in the cycling lane. So he's doing what she's supposed to do. This one is not. Here we have runners heading with traffic, both on the other side of the street and on this side of the street. So again, to me, it's going to cause a lot of confusion, and therefore it's a safety issue. People going every which way. And here again, there's a bicycle here in the pedestrian lane as well, and one up there as well. This is on the property. I tried to find the end of the road because I don't know. I'm ignorant, and I say that to everybody. And I tried to find the end of the road and measure into 3 feet, which is probably not what you're supposed to do. But I thought, let me just get a gander on this. That's my car, opening the car door again into traffic. Some people have mentioned that I'm an artist. I need a visual. This is on the left. That's before the rain. It took 1 week to get to the point where it was just damp. On the right, this is after the rain yesterday. Not even a full day of rain. It was a heavy rain, granted, but it was half an hour. You guys remember? Okay. This is in Lothar's. Lothar is going to be speaking. This is in his yard today. We have a flooding issue. It may be nuisance flooding to you. It's not a nuisance to us. The water already goes to the back of our properties and to the sides of our properties. We have a swale, and it's not a pretty picture. Again, this is just showing where the actual, I don't know. I'm being stupid. I'm guessing at things, trying to help myself understand, help everybody else understand. I need my cheaters, and I hope I have 1 more minute. I'd like to ask about the data that you've presented. Mr. What is your name, sir? Mr. Loper. Thank you, Jim. So someone else asked this question already, but I'd like to ask it further. And it seems that these studies that have been done on volume and speed are adequate for this project. That's what you're presenting, correct?
That the project is adequate for the...
That the studies that have been done that you presented from 2004, 2012, 13, whatever it was, 14, 15, 16, that those are adequate information for this project?
Oh, adequate justification for the project. Yes.
Information.
Yes. All of those studies, the results of all those studies were recommending improvements because there were existing problems.
Okay, were they recommending this scope of improvement?
They were recommending these items, a separate pedestrian path, traffic control devices, and the project that we have ended up with is a implementation of those items along with the discussion with the town.
But this is magnified, correct? From what it was?
It's slightly wider than it was originally in 2019, yes.
If I may?
Yeah. Yes, sir.
So Jim talks about DelDOT standards.
Yes, sir.
And if we were to do DelDOT standards and we did not want to because that would widen the road even more, then the pathway on Collins would be 10 feet, and then you would have both the bike and the pedestrian lane. So what we did was try to find a sort of a more common ground, something that would be less offensive, which is hard, at only 8 feet. But to do what the studies recommended would probably be creating a multi-use path that was wider than what's proposed.
And so are paths like that being planned for Lakites and other places in town that have the smaller roads than we do? Probably same kind of right-of-way? Are there other?
The town is actively looking at pedestrian and bicycle safety issues throughout the town, have commissioned some work to that end. We're waiting on a report for recommendations on other streets right now.
And again, I just want to go back to the studies. As we see with the flooding, is there an environmental impact study done on Collins Street alone for this project?
There has not been an environmental impact study, and I will say, and I think there's probably some people in the room that have taken the opportunity to look at Collins in the last few rains that see that, yes, you do have some standing water, like much of the community after a rain, because the community is at or below sea level, 3/4 of it plus. But your rain does infiltrate generally within 24 to 36 hours. So 24 to 36, looked at it yesterday, looked at it today. I think, so you do have wet, but I can take you to many places in Bethany that are wet, so.
That picture on the left is after over a week after a rain, so I'm sorry. I'm just letting you know.
I've not seen that.
I'm just letting you know.
That's this week, and I think there's been other people that have
Do you have
made the
many more
trip, so.
questions?
No. Let's see, one more. Okay. How will this project slow the traffic down, please?
Well, we'll be adding speed bumps. There'll be better speed bumps than what was there. But speed is not our problem on Collins. A safe haven for pedestrians and cyclists is our problem.
I would beg to differ.
So-
And I would please, that's why I'm asking about the validity of the studies on pedestrian and vehicular traffic on Collins, all the way from Collins, from Half Moon, from Fairway, down to Kent. And I would plead that you have another traffic study to find out what the volume is at this present day of the pedestrians going through, the traffic going in both directions, and especially the speed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and I would ask you please to keep your comments to 3 minutes. The next one is Lothar Schappler. I'm sorry if I mispronounced that. Oh, well, thank you.
Could you bring up that one pager? So I've been working with the group of concerned citizens on, oh, sorry. You have the other one? This is a little easier. I've been working with the concerned citizen group there on Collins because I live there, and some of the due diligence led to 3 issues that I think, for the benefit of all the people involved here, should be aware of, and they're all about questions that come out that are not clear enough in the plan that you've put forward. And so these are points that we think need to be raised, because the questions that are listed here need to be answered one way or the other sooner or later. Issue number 1, it's been pointed out that the application of the Real Property Acquisition Act needs to be thought of in the proposed pathway. 1, the construction crews need access to our property to perform the work. I think it was answered that they don't need to, but I find that hard to believe. If so, have you estimated how much you will need to pay residents for temporary construction easements? 3rd, DelDOT regulations require the 10 feet, which I brought up earlier, permanent easement on either side of a roadway. You've said that's not going to be followed here. I'm not sure why. That's okay, but the 4th point being, have you done appraisals for this, and will the town be following the Real Property Acquisition Act where it applies? So I don't expect you to answer this now, but I think there's plenty of people who are asking these questions and would like to know where you stand and how it's being dealt with. The second issue is the effect of Collins Street pathway on future construction and renovations. By that I mean the property owners that are on Collins right now, perhaps some others. And this is how I understand it, and most of us understand it. The current town ordinances require specific setbacks that apply when structures are added to a property, whether it's renovations or new construction. The proposed plan will shift the edge of the center of the roadway, the edge and the center of the roadway, by 3 feet to the south in relation to the current property lines. That means the street side setback is typically referenced to the edge of the roadway. And whether it's the edge of the roadway or the center line of the roadway, it doesn't really matter. It's one or the other, I believe. And the net result of this pathway project is that the street side setbacks will effectively reduce the allowable footprint of new structures on Collins Street for all the property owners. That's a statement I'm making based on what I know.
Yeah.
Whether that's exactly correct or not, because I can't find the ordinances that apply.
I can shed some light on that. That's incorrect. So, and the reason I can shed some light on that is I'm an architect. I work in town all the time. Your setback is from your property line, not from the edge of the road. So this has no impact on your buildable area, on any future addition, and it doesn't take any of that away from you.
That's a piece of good news. Is that atypical for Bethany Beach, or is it?
No, your setbacks are typically from your property lines, generally speaking, not just in Bethany Beach. Every town has different interpretations of their own zoning codes and things like that. Some places, South Bethany, for instance, measures height from the center line of the roadway, so that's where some of that line of thinking could come from. We don't do that in Bethany typically, but generally speaking, everything is going to be from your own property line.
And just for the record, because it's an important question, what is the front setback, the roadside setback on a property on Collins today, as it stands in the ordinance?
Yo, you're putting me on the spot now, but I think it's 20 feet.
20?
20 feet.
Well, there's houses now that have footprints that are well closer than 20 feet.
I'm not sure on the front setback. And the 40-foot section of Collins is one of the older sections of
Right.
town. And so there are homes that are much closer to the right-of-way than would be found in other places.
And there is an exception, so not having it right in front of me, but I would tell you that generally your front yard setback is 20 feet in the town of Bethany. I can't tell you specifically what it is on Collins. I can tell you that in the case that there are a certain number of houses that are closer to the street than that average, than that 20-foot setback, you can get a survey, average it, and then use the average of those to make your new setback. So just because I'm saying 20 feet doesn't mean that that's what is going to actually apply to your specific property.
We realize Bethany in the 40-foot right-of-way section is a narrow section that dates back to an earlier time, but we're concerned about the future interpretation of the ordinances when it comes to, I have an empty lot that I may want to develop sometime. Are the rules going to change? Because the roadway is 3 feet closer to the property line after this pathway. That's my point, and it applies to every renovation that's being done on the street as well, people adding porches and whatnot. Okay, I'm sure my 3 minutes are close, but the third issue is Collins Street is, in our view, an undersized minor street per current code. The city and town code requires a minimum of 50-foot right-of-way for a minor street, but Collins is only 40, so it's on the short side there based on current standards, right? The roadway is now 20 feet with an easement of 10 feet on either side, and the proposed roadway will become 28 feet, including the proposed 8-foot pathway, leaving 5-foot easement on the south and 7-foot easement on the north side, which begs the question, what is the purpose of the easement anyway? It's about access to utilities, it's about servicing the road, and it's about safety. And
So it's not an easement, it's part of the public right-of-way, and the right-of-way is there, the public right-of-way is there to ensure safe transit of cars and people. So that's what the right-of-way is there for. It's not an easement of any sort.
But maybe that's the wrong word to use. Let's call it a buffer between the roadway and the property line.
It's the right-of-way, let's call it that.
Yeah.
Okay, but it's becoming less. And it's already too little based on current standards.
And that's why we're proposing the pathway, because it's too little for the number of pedestrians and bicyclists that use it.
And I think most people feel that the solution that's being implemented here to make it safer is not the only and the best.
Understand?
I'll leave it at that.
Mr. Shepler, would you be sure that we get an electronic copy of this?
It's actually...
Is it? Okay, we do.
have it right now.
Okay, good. Thank you. Next, we have Alan Day.
Thank you. I've heard repeatedly, and this goes back to the 2019 meeting, I believe it was, that speed is not a problem on Collins. I have a real issue with that because not only living there and watching the craziness that goes on, the town went from seasonal speed bumps to full-time year-round speed bumps. Now, how can you say the speed isn't a problem after you did that?
I'm saying that speed isn't a problem per the speed limit. 25 miles per hour anywhere in Bethany Beach on any residential street is too high to speed. Anywhere. I mean, any of these side streets, any Tingle, Evans, any street in Bethany West, 25 mile an hour is too high a speed. So as it relates to the speed limit posted there, speed is not a problem. Should the speed be less, 20, 15 miles an hour to make it safe? Certainly, but we don't have the latitude to change that. So when I say speed isn't a problem, violating the speed limit is not a problem.
I'm confused about lowering the speed limit. Now, there's a difference between whether you can enforce the speed limit at a lower level or just lowering the speed limit. Why can't we just lower the speed limit, as they've done in Sea Colony, that works beautifully?
Sea Colony is a private community. Those aren't public streets. They can't even enforce that. I mean, it's not enforceable. There's no
works.
tickets that can be written.
It works.
So there's a multitude of reasons. Some of them have to do with civil liability and traffic stops for why we just don't simply post it when we can't enforce it. We can't make traffic stops. If we post it at 15 and somebody goes 25, we can't make a valid traffic stop and even warn somebody for that.
I don't mean this any negativity toward the police department. I'm sure they do what they've been told to do. But I've never seen anybody doing any speed enforcement on Collins Street in 25 plus years.
And I can show you thousands of cars that have been clocked on Collins with speeds that are all below 25 miles an hour, with a very small percentage of people that even go over 25 or even get to the point in time where they're going 35 miles an hour where the police department might cite them. And I have reams of that data I'd be glad to share with you. We would love to slow the speed down in town, and for you to think that we wouldn't, I just don't understand that. There's just not a practical application we have to do that, to post it and really make it work for us.
Do we know where these speed bumps are going to be? I think we proposed 2 so far.
Yeah, they're on the block between Kent and Fairway. Off the top of my head, I don't know exactly how they're distanced. It probably
a long way, yeah.
most likely splits it up into thirds. I don't know where the 2 are off the top of my head right now. Yes, ma'am.
And the only other comment I would make is you can lower the speed limit if you want to. Enforceability is not an issue at all. And there's no civil liability for lowering our speed limit. I can assure you that. You just don't want to.
Thank you, Mr. Day.
Thank you.
Next yes, Laura Irwin.
As a palate cleanser, can I just say that I'm excited to learn I was right about the setbacks? It is 20 feet. I looked it up. But if you, to get the weeds on it, there is a section where it's at least 3 houses are closer than 20 feet. You can use the average of the houses on your street to determine your setback. So it may indeed be less than 20 feet, even for your vacant lot.
And please speak into the microphone.
I just want to encourage you to have the environmental impact done, because it looks like a lot of what has been studied is from years before, and with more rain events, and that's happening all over the country, there's just a lot more humidity in the air, and then when there is a rain event, it just creates more moisture on the ground, that this will increase runoff, and there is less ground for absorption. So the other alternative, what I heard at the earlier meeting, is that there could be more money for the better quality porous asphalt. So that should be studied, and should it seem right, then there should be more money for it. And I forgot my other comment.
Thank you.
Okay, so appreciate the council and all the work they do, and you represent the people of the town of Bethany, obviously. You know, we voted for you. You guys represent all the things we need and the safety and the whole side of it. And I've been at the earlier meeting and this meeting, and there seems to be a lot of issues in terms of, do we even need to do this project, spend $1 million on this? And I would just hope that you would listen to what we've presented. You had indicated that you get a lot of responses by email and text and so forth. And I would imagine that a lot of them are more negative than positive, based on what I'm hearing today as maybe a general sense of the community, and that you would, you know, doing your job, would do what we'd like you to do. So that's it.
And just for the record, we have received positive comments for people on Collins who can't be here tonight.
Percentage-wise, what would you say the?
I don't know offhand.
Okay.
Yeah. Next is Dan Maloney.
Thank you. Thanks for getting us all together in January. It's great to see all the Collins Street folks here together in the middle of the winter time. So thanks for having us in the depths of January. I'd like to bring your attention to the Coastal Point article on page 15 today by a Rod Gowan. I'm not sure if he's here or not, but if you haven't read it, oh, Rob, fantastic, take a bow. If you haven't read it, read it. It's really good, and we should also enter that into the public record for this workshop, because it's a really good summary of what the situation is, how bad it could be, and how positive solutions we can take without wasting $1 million. So thanks a lot, Rod. I believe the purpose of this is to increase pedestrian and bicycle safety. Is that right? Okay. Well, we all know that faster car speeds and more cars means more dangers to pedestrians and to bicyclists. In past meetings of the council, this project is referred to the causeway. I noticed that you've changed your verbiage because that's a dangerous word, but that's actually what you're proposing is a causeway with more traffic and faster speeds. Slower car speeds and fewer cars means more safety. Which results are we going to take? Which of these options are we going to take today? That's really important for you to think about. Currently, the current project encourages more traffic on a wider road. Cars are going to come into this road and they're going to see the width of that pavement, and they are going to go faster. That is human nature. That's going to increase the danger. The road's going to be closer to houses, closer to utility poles. It's going to run over flood control pipes, and there's going to be less parking. My comment on the flood control pipes are in front of our house. Part of the pavement has sinks every couple of years. Right now there's cracks in the pavement, circular cracks where the pavement is going down, and if you move that pavement further to the right, the pipes underneath are going to be more impacted, not less. Do we really want to spend $1 million to increase danger, both to pedestrians, for bicyclists, and residents, and to anger residents? Is that really our purpose? That can't be 3 minutes. Better solution is to keep traffic on 26, encourage less traffic. We've worked well with speed bumps and with the signage that everybody's put up, and that's great. We do need to use those 15-mile-an-hour speed limits. There is no reason why you should not do that. Local traffic-only signs should be put up on 26. No doubt about it. The exceptions, of course, would be for the trolley, for pedestrians, for bicyclists, and for church parking, obviously. This would basically have more encouragement from the people from Bethany West that have been, I'm a resident of Bethany West, but it would have more support from Bethany West because it would cut down on the traffic cutting through residential areas. Keep the residential streets for residents, don't turn it into a causeway for through traffic. The way you're going to do that is to restrict traffic coming off of 26. So the choice is clear. Do we do the smart, right thing and reject this proposal? I hope you do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Next, we have John Doman.
Hi, John Doman, 420 Collins Street. I just want to make a comment on the funding for the project. It's going to be close to $1 million. And I'm told that the source of a lot of the funds, over $672,000, is the American Rescue Plan Act funds that were designated for COVID relief. And the guidelines for COVID relief are revenue replacement for the provision of government services due to COVID-19 public health emergency, COVID-19 expenditures or negative economic impacts of COVID-19, including assistance to small businesses, households, and hard-hit industries and economic recovery, premium pay for essential workers, and investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. Doesn't seem that this project falls anywhere within those guidelines. And those of us on Collins Street feel that you're going to be spending $1 million to make a situation, as far as safety concerned, worse. And it doesn't seem that these funds were provided to the township or the community here to be spent on this kind of a project. Thank you.
Funding was submitted to ARPA through the ARPA grant, met their criteria. I can get you the particulars Monday if you would like, or Tuesday rather.
Sure.
So.
Next, Mr. Rod Gowan.
Well, there's a lot that's been said already that doesn't need to be resaid. You know, I read all the meeting notes from the 2019 meeting. I had them sent to me, and I read every one multiple times. It appeared to me that there was an overwhelming negative sentiment about this project.
Mm-hmm.
So you folks approved the project over what I would tell you was what I deemed overwhelming sentiment, negative sentiment. So having said that, I'm opposed to the project. And I don't want to do the project at all. I don't want to add 3 feet. I don't think we should have approved 5 feet. And we did this based on studies that are outdated. And, you know, we can talk about speeding. I live there. I see it. Cars are traveling too fast. I get the fact that we can't enforce the speed limit. But let me ask anybody, when's the last time you saw a speed limit sign and you just took a moment to pause to think, gee whiz, is that a real speed limit sign, or should I not know whether we can enforce that in this town or not? It doesn't happen. So the speed limit sign is a deterrent, and I respect that we can't enforce it, but we need to consider that. And we need to consider measures that will slow traffic down. We talked about speed bumps. You know, I guess I didn't realize DelDOT had specifications for speed bumps, but we need punishing speed bumps. Those are the kind of speed bumps when your front wheels hit those speed bumps, you know you're not going to go over at the same rate of speed on the back wheels. You slow down. And we need more speed bumps. I've heard that from many people. The big thing about this project, it's going to destroy our neighborhood. You know, we have a beautiful tree-lined street. We can enjoy the people coming and going in the summer. This is a problem for 5 to 6 weeks during the summer. We're turning everything upside down over an issue for 5 to 6 weeks during the summer. And everybody in this room probably wants to keep everybody in this town and our visitors safe. But when you open that road up, you are going to encourage the higher rate of speed, okay? It looks like a runway. You saw the pictures, and I think it's a bad deal. So I would really encourage this group to not move forward, and let's put some common sense measures in that could mitigate the traffic, do the speed bumps, put the no-through signs coming from 26 into Bethany West that flow down through Collins. Make sure the stop signs are visible. And if you're going to proceed, do the project that goes from Collins to over to Wellington to help, ease and make those people safe when they're out on Kent. But other than that, I think this project should not move forward in addition to the environmental stuff that we said. And by the way, you said that runoff's not a problem. I looked at the FEMA flood maps today. A lot of Collins Street is in the flood zone, in the hazard zone, okay? Most of it, where you're talking about. So you need to take a look at that. It's a big deal.
Excuse me, for the record, you said that you read the minutes from that meeting that
Yes.
we had in 2019?
Yes.
Do you know Paula Gowan?
Yes, that's my wife.
All right. She testified, I'm right on the corner of Kent and Collins. I can tell you that people don't always stop at that stop sign, and there's going to be someone hit one day. I have a big porch on my house, and I sit out there a lot. We've had our house down here for about 20-some years. I moved down here about 3 years ago full-time. I just think something has to be done, and if it's a sidewalk's going to help, that's great.
Well,
And then,
I appreciate that.
And then you wrote on June 30th, 2020, and said, when are we going to see the sidewalk improvements on Collins? So just to set the record straight.
Well, you've also, this project has morphed into something bigger than what,
But that was before we were going to take 3 feet or use 3 feet on the north side.
well, now that I've heard a lot of my residents' opinions and my neighbors'
Right,
opinions,
right.
I'm
But I just want to set the
I'm
record
against it.
straight.
I got it. And I still think we need to have that stop sign and that improvement and I just said that, between Collins and Wellington, okay? But that's, and my wife she's entitled to have her opinion.
Okay. At least we can laugh. Next, we have George Petros.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I live at 605 Collins Street. Purchased my house in 2004 and became a permanent resident, used it after my retirement as my primary residence since 2001. Others have spoken similar to what I want to comment on here already. And there's a thing called, the law of unintended consequences. I don't believe anyone on the council is doing this to hurt Bethany West or Collins Street specifically, but I think you failed to consider at all the true impact of the project as you now proposed it, or even in 2019 voted to do it. I came here originally when I bought this, and after years of bringing the family here, because a former law partner who lived here showed me Bethany, the great quiet resort place for family. And he told me, buy here and your family will always come. And he is right, was right. But when family comes, they come in their cars. Now, when you do this project, and I walked Collins Street and did a tape measure, many houses on this project, you are taking away 2 parking spots, for sure, of their driveways. There are trees on some of these properties where you cannot just drive up onto your lawn. You are going to create a parking problem. I have had 6 cars at a time at my house during the summer season, if not even more sometimes. They already use my lawn, and that's with 4 cars in my driveway. When I lose some parking place there, then what you are inviting is my family, any other's family, and along this whole street, you are inviting them to drive their car, drive over that pedestrian parkway or path, as you've called it, whether it's the 3-foot side or it's the 5-foot side. That invites interaction, unintended consequences. People have spoken about they won't even be able to open their doors without the door pushing out into the so-called pedestrian path. And why are we doing this? You said it's pedestrian safety. In 2019, I stood here after getting statistics from the police department and told you that since you acquired the streets, 1978, from the East Coast Resort, they were the founders of West Bethany, there had been 5 total accidents, none of them involving a pedestrian and none of them being serious. Since 2019 to now, the years pass. Though I don't have it with certainty, but I've been told no other accidents have occurred. So you can take these studies and they can look at gross numbers and they can say, oh, we have a problem. The real proof is that Collins Street accommodates its residents and accommodates its community. It isn't the safety level to the degree that we've assumed it here as to whether we should expend this project. And in doing it, as I've said before, you've neglected what does it do to our community. In the earlier session, you had the informative session. I could not help but notice, and to quote a past president, words matter, Collins Street was referred to as the Collins Corridor. It is not a corridor. It is a nice, beautiful residential street filled with family, community, and people, whether they're crowded at times side to side or not, who pay attention to what's around them, and that's why you don't have a history of bad injuries or accidents on Collins Street. The pattern of the people, the pattern of those in cars, bicycles, even carriages carrying small children, which my son-in-laws have carried my grandchildren when they were very small in these things you hook onto the back of a bicycle, back and forth to the beach, weeks at a time, never a problem. Now, I'm not saying occasionally there isn't someone who speeds a little too fast, or that there isn't a crowd of people that you have to walk slow, but there isn't this major problem, and Collins Street is not a corridor. And as someone else said, human nature. Okay, human nature is when you do this project, if you do this project, and I hope your minds aren't made up, but if you do this project, it isn't going to be long till people know, oh, I can get to Route 1 faster. I don't have to stay on 26, come down to the light and make a right. I'll just go right through Collins Street. And those are the people who aren't even looking to go to the beach. They're looking to avoid 26 traffic, get themselves out on Route 1, and it's going to cause a mess.
Thank you.
May I, one brief statement.
Okay.
When in 2019 you approved it, there was a council member who stated, someone brought to our attention or stated there had only been 5 accidents on Collins Street, which was my statement to the council. But I don't want to be the one that has to wake up one day and find out that there was an accident well, the reverse is true. That should not be the consideration. The consideration should be that I don't want to be the one that sees someone injured because we brought more traffic to Collins Street, because we made it an alternative route or corridor to Route 1, or because loads of cars that got on their lawns and impaired vision of children, and some child runs out to the street when it wasn't safe to do so. And that is more likely to happen with this project, so I urge you to not approve.
Thank you, Mr. Petros. Jim Weber?
Yes, Jim Weber, 407 Collins Street. I feel like, I've been having a 4-year dream and I just woke up, saw this project, and now I've got a migraine headache. A lot of the things that have already been said is what I was going to say. I don't like this project. I didn't like it back in 2019. I felt like the project has kind of been jammed down our throats. The cart has been put in front of the horse, so to speak, because I feel like you should have gotten the property owners involved first, listened to their concerns, and then developed a plan. You've gone out, you've spent all this money for a consultant. You know, nobody's ever knocked on our doors to get our opinions. And now you've spent all this money, you've got all these beautiful drawings and pictures and whatnot. And, you know, I echo everybody else's concerns regarding this project. If you do have to go forward with something, I would like to see a trial period of a one-way option heading west from Kent to Fairway. The reason I say west is because all of our services run that direction, and this would eliminate a lot of the traffic and would point it out towards 26. Because if you go on ahead with this project, you might as well put a neon sign out on 26, take a right here, and take a shortcut to the beach. Because these vacationers, they come down here, they're going to figure it out in no time. Their main objective is to get to the beach in the quickest amount of time possible. So I am against the project. I've always been against the project. And, you know, I appreciate everything you've done, but that's all I've got.
Thank you, Mr. Weber. Boots Sturgis. This afternoon you spoke for the Kent side of your property. Tonight you're speaking for the Collins Street side of your property.
So again, thank you for all the hard work you do. We do appreciate it. I think we're all on the same team. We all want to be safe. We want to provide a safe passage for everyone. But we disagree with this project. And my dad built our cottage 56 years ago. We've always welcomed change. People walk on our lawn, it's fine. We're good with that. But I really, and my husband, we just are opposed to this project for a variety of reasons, which have been mentioned, but I'll maybe mention them again, a few of them. But I really think the root of the problem is the traffic. And I think that should be where the focus is. How can we restrict and reduce the flow and the volume of traffic? That would solve a lot of problems. And I think there's some alternatives, which I'll mention really quickly. But back to the pedestrian path, I believe it'll make it less of a safe environment for pedestrians and people. I think it will increase the traffic of both. I think the telephone poles are a serious issue. I mean, even if we don't have to comply with the regulation of DelDOT, those poles are going to be right up on, some of them, right up on the street. And if a car hits a pole and the pole falls over, that could be a big problem. Anyway, it's risky crossing Route 1. Let's see, the new cars are much quieter. And if they're coming up behind people, which they will be, on people walking on the pedestrian path, and only 3.5 people can be on the path, and it's a group of 5 who are talking and having fun and getting ready to go to the beach, they're going to step out. And I think that's really a serious issue. You know, there's a big difference between studies and theory and the reality. And I think the people here today are trying to show the reality of it. We observe this. We sit on our porches we see what's going on. The reality of the situation is that it will make it less safe. Let's see. The people, yeah, I said that they won't be staying on the path. They'll be going in opposite directions, and especially if they're cyclists and pedestrians on the same path. I was talking to a cyclist just recently, and she said, you know, it depends on the state what the regulations are, but in a lot of states, cyclists, it's illegal for a cyclist to be on the same path as a pedestrian. So, you know, that is a big safety issue. Parking, I understand that if you build a house in Bethany Beach now, I could be wrong about this, there should be a parking space for each bedroom. That's not going to happen for a lot of people. And one gentleman, I don't know if he was going to talk or not, but I don't see how he's going to be able to park at all. We talked about it today. And so anyway, some alternatives, I mean, you know, as I said, we all want to be on the same team. Could be, let's encourage the trolley, or maybe have a van, you know, a series of vans with, I'll talk really fast, you know, a little cart behind it that would just circle between Bethany West and the beach all day long. During that problem time, which is about 6 weeks, you know, this solution is for all year, and if it's going to cause a big problem for people, then let's just address it, you know, try to figure it out for the 6 weeks. A one-way street is a great idea, yes. So some people were opposed to it, but if I had to vote between a one-way street and the pedestrian path, I'd vote for the one-way street, and most of the people I've talked to would do the same. Let's see, I just wanted to say that there's a group of us who have written a letter, and we have a link that you can go online, sign the letter, read our letter, or I have a copy here, and you can sign it here if you'd like to see some of the ideas all, you know, consolidated in one spot.
Thank you.
And I think that was, there's more, but I can't remember. I can't read my writing, so.
Thank you, Ms. Sargent.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I just wanted to clarify that section 425-87 of the town code, you said it requires one parking spot per bedroom. It refers to new builds and major renovations, and it's not one for one. It's, I don't know the exact number, but it's not one for one.
It's a sliding scale. As bedrooms go up, parking requirements go up, but I think it starts at a minimum of 2.
Yeah.
And I think we should point out that those spaces would be required on the property. You cannot take
On the
account of
property.
on-street
It's not
parking.
on the street,
right.
no.
on the property.
Yeah,
Thank you.
okay, thank you. But wait a minute, we'll have to go through the list. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Sargis. The next one I'm having difficulty reading. It looks like McPhee Leonard, 600 Collins. Oh, okay, come right up. You have beautiful handwriting, by the way.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, could you put your name and address, please?
Pardon me?
Name and address.
Oh, McPhee, 600 Collins Street. And my thoughts are, we have been there 25 years, and we come here for what has already been described beautifully, for the country, the lack of traffic, the lack of noise, to just sit on our front porches. We don't need more traffic on Collins Street. I don't want to listen to radios blaring. I don't want to have fumes coming in. What you're proposing is going to bring more traffic. And if you're proposing to put all these additional lanes in, then the motorist is just going to say, well, these people should stay in their lane. And they're not going to be as aware. Now, I don't know if any of the council lives on Collins Street, but I sit there and I watch families enjoying themselves, walking down to the beach, looking out for each other, and at the bus stop, you can have as many as 8 to 10 people waiting for the trolley to come by. And that's not going to work. So I'm saying the people here have told you, this is our home. This is our retreat. It's supposed to be a quiet, Collins has always been a quiet, tree-lined street, and we don't need more traffic. The people know how to walk down it, and we know how to take care of when we're driving on it, to look for children, to look out for it. And there's very few parents that let their children outside in these days without them with them. So no, maybe there hasn't been an accident. Maybe there will be an accident. But that is life. And right now, you are destroying what brings us peace and calm, and for no apparent reason, except to spend this money to put in this lane that we don't need. So that's all I feel very strongly, as you can tell.
Thank you very much. Janie Schweitzer.
You guys have worked really hard. I know
Name and
this is a
address.
difficult issue.
Name and address?
318 Wellington and 607 Old Post Court in Bethany West. I'll take it.
3 minutes. You requested.
Well, that was 3. So,
Just a little bit of, can I add one comment? We were in church one time, and my wife's phone, she's normally really good about this, but her phone went off, and you know what it was? When the saints come marching in. The priest literally looks out, sort of in our direction, and goes, well, at least it's appropriate, so. I'm sorry for interrupting you, but I couldn't resist.
you didn't. I'll take it. So shifting gears just a little bit, the telephone poles that are in Bethany West on Collins, is it possible that those could be underground, that the electricity could be put underground so that the poles are taken away completely?
I'll take two approaches to that. Thank you. First of all, it's extremely expensive. And second off, there have been a number of studies that have found that it actually makes the utilities more vulnerable to flooding and damage and more difficult to repair in the long run when those things do happen. We actually were considering putting the utilities on South Atlantic underground, and it was lessons learned that I believe Cliff went to a trip and learned from people that had been victims of Sandy Hook up in New Jersey, and they were unable to fix and get power back to the community because everything was still underwater and subterranean at the moment. So we've actually determined that for communities like this, the wind is a problem, but it's much less of a problem than the flooding, and therefore the industry direction is to leave them above ground.
The undergrounding would match the cost of the project.
Okay. So, separate question, the flashing lights and the piano keys crossing on Kent, is that going to happen regardless of whether the Collins and/or Wellington project is approved?
I would say unless the entire project is approved, there would be no reason to put that light there.
And so if Collins is not approved, then Wellington would not be approved?
I don't know what the council is going to do and how they'll consider it. So the council will have the option when they look at this to do whatever.
So those are separate votes. Collins?
It will be one project. There may come up at the table some interest in splitting them. I don't know.
Okay, and that vote is this coming Friday at 2?
No.
Next Friday. A week from today, at 2. Okay, thank you.
Robert Donlin.
I'm Robert Dowler.
I'm at 602 Collins Street. This is the third time I've stood here over the years on the same issue of Collins Street. And each time that I've come before you, and people in the interested people have come before you and have suggested other alternatives. You've gotten letters from a group from Collins Street. People have suggested other ways to maybe mitigate traffic. And each time you have not acted on those. I implore you, before you spend $940,000, give some of these other suggestions a try. They might work. And I would guarantee you that if this project goes through, in about 4 years after that, we will be here again, and you will be considering, how do we calm traffic on Collins Street? And it'll be a lot more traffic that's comes off Route 26. That's where the real problem is, and I'm sure you should look at other alternatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Towler. Next on the list is Don McAvoy. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, that's the last one. You had a comment. Please keep it brief. Over at the microphone.
We just heard, again, Jennifer Carter. We had heard the thing about the number of parking spaces per dwelling, and it was some calculation per bedroom. So I think that's where, we just don't know. But we had heard also the rumor that it had to be in a new build. We had to supply 5 parking spaces per new build. So again, rumors fly. So that's where we've heard all these things.
So no, it's dependent on the number of bedrooms in your house.
Right.
So but as you have more bedrooms, you are required to provide more parking spaces.
Right.
It's not 5 though.
Okay. But that,
I mean, it
that-
could be. It
Right,
could be if you
exactly,
build a
big
big house.
mansions, right. I have one more question, please. Could you please put a Your Speed real-time monitor on Collins as soon as possible, like the ones that are on Wellington and Oakwood? Because they have them there and they've been there for years that I know of. I don't know how many, how long, you obviously know. But we would love one of those at least, that would help. I know when I go down Wellington or Oakwood, because I use those a lot, I'm cutting through. And I try to go, I usually in town also, because of the farmer's market, I'm involved in everything. I go 20 in town, just by choice. But that helps go bing, oh my gosh, I'm going 27. Oh my gosh, I'm going, it helps you back down. I think we would love to have one of those on Collins Street, somewhere along in there.
As long as it takes us to order it and install it, you'll have one.
Thank you so much. And thank you, everyone. Madam Mayor, I have to tell everyone, she has been phenomenal through all of this. It's a hard job, everyone, but Madam Mayor, thank you so much. And the committee, thank you.
It's everybody. The people, you who have come and participated have been very respectful too, and everybody here on the council. It's all, one more comment. Oh, no, but you have to come to the microphone. And you have to identify yourself.
I'm Carol Connolly. I live on Hawksbill and Turtle Walk. And I walked Collins today. I saw some of you out. There were groups of people out. I love walking that way. I don't want to walk on 26 because I think you have a beautiful neighborhood. But I personally think it will be enhanced by having a lovely walkway. And it will not. I don't understand why the traffic has gotten mixed up with this, because as far as I can see, this has nothing to do with the traffic, and if that's an issue, then that's a separate concern for the people in Bethany West. This is about all of us that love to walk, and we love to walk because Bethany is such a beautiful place to walk. And yes, I think it will be safer for me and when my family's here and whoever I'm walking with to walk through Bethany West if there's more space given to me on Collins, because it is narrow. I think it will enhance, if you give it a chance, the whole area. It's not going to draw, I don't understand, and maybe I'm missing something, why the feeling is it's going to draw traffic off of 26. I think it's the people that know it's there are going to know it's there and are going to continue to use it and are going to be thrilled that it's there because it will make us a little safer walking through all of the streets of Bethany.
Well, you know, it's the riffraff from Turtle Walk that have created this problem.
Call it what you want.
Clarify that Bethany West does not go all the way down to 10, please.
Yes. Okay, with that, thank you all for coming out, and thank you everyone who listened virtually. If anyone has additional comments they want to send electronically, please do so. We take them all very seriously, and we'll take a look at them. But thank you very much, everybody.